If you had to guess which one of our experts was a rock journalist who lived in LA with the stars, who would it be? We'll tell you that and more as we roll out another priceless Antiques Roadshow. One of the things I like best about the Roadshow is when our experts reveal the hidden history of an object, usually a big surprise for the owner. In this episode, John Benjamin and Geoffrey Munn decode the secret language of jewellery.
Thistle is pleasure combined with pain, so a little bit of sadomasochism there.
Roadshow regular Lars Tharp winds back the clock 20 years to his first moment in front of the cameras.
My mother has the complete Lars Tharp recordings on her shelves at home.
We've blown the dust off the first of those appearances, and we hear about some near-death experiences of the antique variety.
A lorry hit our house.
Beg your pardon?
A lorry hit our house. We had an accident, yeah, I know. And the vibrations shook it off the wall.
We all love a mystery, especially when something's revealed that's been right under our noses for years. Our jewellery experts, Geoffrey Munn and John Benjamin, can read the hidden messages in jewellery like a book. And this lost language is invisible to the rest of us, but John and Geoffrey are fluent.
I am completely fascinated by the metaphor of jewellery, and it's very strange that in the 20th century we seem to have totally lost sight of these meanings. They would be as open as an open book to our predecessors.
Gems have always had their own particular meaning, and also they have a power about them. You know, once upon a time something like a sapphire would be worn because the limpid blue was supposed to keep away diseases.
It's a bit like a sort of cataract operation that I'm trying to do day by day to try to tell people what the significance of these slightly covert symbols and metaphors are.
It had to be you.
One of the oldest love tokens I've seen on the Roadshow was an enamelled gold dress ornament in the form of a man's hand with his sleeve offering a jewel to a recipient. Because this is a hand reaching across time, a hand with a little diamond ring on its finger, offering a girl in the 17th century a ruby and diamond pendant with a pearl on it. And the message there is that it's diamonds forever, rubies for passion, pearls for Venus, very unambiguous in the 17th century.
It had to be you.
In the 17th century, they were very keen, most particularly in Shakespeare, with levels of illusion. And so in Shakespeare, there are plays within plays. And here's a piece of jewellery, which is a piece of jewellery within a piece of jewellery. And that's why it's so exciting to me. And it says it all about jewellery, that jewellery is a sort of distillation of what's going on in the fine and decorative arts, in literature and in music. And it's a very high art form indeed. Well, not everybody likes reptiles, so why on earth did you choose to buy a ring in the form of a snake?
It was more a case of a jeweller in Northampton about 6 years ago who knew me and knew the sort of things I like. And he said, got an old ring you'll be interested in. That was it.
I think the snake ring at Powys is an interesting object because, in a way, people are rather sort of touchy about snakes. They find them faintly repulsive, and they couldn't quite understand why a snake in the form of a ring would be something you'd want to give to your girlfriend. A snake biting its tail, did you imagine that there might be a hidden meaning to all of that?
I've wondered about it once or twice, but I wouldn't know what it is.
Well, it's a very, very ancient symbol indeed. In fact, the symbol itself is probably 4,000 years old.
Right.
And it was used by the Medes and the Persians, and it's called the Ouroboros, the eternally renewing circle. What this is a very sort of covert rebus, a little hidden message, a message of love, because this is a gift from somebody to somebody else saying that I love you through all eternity.
Oh, lovely.
Wonderful, wonderful roses, magic colours to touch your heart.
The language of flowers is also as old as time, frankly, and it's a very interesting distraction in the 18th and 19th century, but you also hear of it in Shakespeare.
Every flower had its own particular meaning. Naturally, red roses, passion. Marigolds, jealousy. Thistle, which I love, is pleasure combined with pain. So a little bit of sadomasochism there.
And the flower that rules above all others is the rose. The rose always stands for love. It's one of the attributes of Venus. It's so beautiful, and it carries with it the message of pain as well. It's the pleasure and pain of love, because it's a striking, fragrant, beautiful thing, but then you prick yourself on the prickles, and so it's an emblem of what our human relationships are. So it's not surprising that it turns up very often in jewellery, and in conjunction with diamonds, it's forever love.
Oh,
and it would have said it pretty loud, actually. It's a surprise to you, isn't it?
It is, because they were maiden aunts. So to say it's enduring love, I don't know where they had it from, where it came from prior to them in the family.
The owner had absolutely no idea of its emblematic meaning, and that was the great fun to demonstrate to her what it meant. And I think she actually left the Antiques Roadshow richer in her own mind about her property, but perhaps richer in a way in understanding what it meant to her predecessors.
We'll be finding out more about the messages concealed within jewellery later in the programme.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Ceramics specialist Lars Tharp is one of the masters when it comes to unravelling a story. He's been doing it in front of the Roadshow cameras for 20 years now. But even he had to start somewhere.
I was very young. I was very scared.
Let's now join our experts with the people of Southampton.
I was with David Batty, my mentor, the sorcerer and the apprentice. In comes a lady with this little object that looks like a sort of metallic Tracy Island. And David looks at this, he's a Japanese specialist, and David and I, neither of us have seen anything like it before. So David says to me, "You do this one." Good.
Lots of little men crawling all over what appears to be an island of coral.
Just to give you a flavour of how it started, it was something like this. Do you have any idea what this is?
You know which country it comes from?
At a guess, Japan or China,
Well,
not sure which.
Well, it's in fact Japanese, and it really is a fantastic piece of workmanship.
And it's really rather rare. But just because something is rare, it doesn't mean, of course, it's worth a lot of money.
Do you have any idea yourself? Is it?
No, I really have no idea.
So I hope you won't be disappointed when I tell you that I think this really rather unusual piece is worth somewhere in the region of
£5,000 and £8,000.
I remember after that show immediately thinking that people would recognize me in the street. And of course, it just doesn't happen. It takes years before you start getting recognized. And even then, people don't know who you are. Everybody thinks I'm John Sandon.
Lars has always enjoyed a professional interest in ceramics, but some of our team had very colourful careers before being bitten by the antiques bug. Glass specialist Andy McConnell gave us access all areas to his collections and his past.
I buy glass at a rate that most people would consider to be kind of dangerous for one's health. Financial as well as mental. There's no logical reason why anybody should be into glass as strongly as I am. I do it because I love it, you know. This is my Crystal Palace. I mean, you know, I've amassed over 31 years something in the realms of 30,000 pieces. And there's hardly any value in this in terms of money. I mean, what would I pay for that? I wouldn't pay any more than £1. I mean, that's, you know, that's £1 for that. A decanter like that, a £5. It's never going to make me rich, this. It's never going to do that. But it gives me profound satisfaction. I suppose it's all down to my parents. It's their fault, because they were part-time antique dealers and they would stop at every antique shop they ever saw. So the deal was I either stay in the car with a bottle of Tizer and a packet of crisps or go in the shop. So you go into the shops and you see all this fabulous stuff. Not only was it pleasing aesthetically, but you could actually make a living out of it. Not that crossed my mind at the time. What I was into was rock and roll. I got into that early and stayed with it hard and fast, and it became my job for quite a long time. I spent 4 years living in Hollywood, touring around with the bands and interviewing the bands and all that. For my way of thinking, it was the best time in rock and roll, and it was all centred on Los Angeles. This is me as a rock journalist circa 1975, photographed by Rod Stewart. This is minutes before we had the most blazing row, and he stormed off because he was about 2 hours late for the interview, and I said, "Who do you think you are?" And he said, "I think I'm Rod Stewart." And we got a real fight, and it was all over the papers, and there was this huge Barney. This is a story I wrote for Sounds magazine and it's about the development of Jefferson Airplane. I remember typing away, you know, and that's sort of like a little kind of artifact that really changed my life, really. They asked me if I wanted to go on the road with them. We went up to Hamburg, Germany. I had some antiques with me at the time because I was a part-time antique dealer. And I walked in, the second shop I walked into to offer my antiques to belonged to this chap, Gunter Kram. And Gunter just said, "I like your taste. You have good taste, Herr McConnell. Perhaps you could bring me Karaffen and wine glasses from England." I said, "Well, I could do, but I know nothing about glass." "Neither do I," he said, "but together we will learn." And that was in 1977, and I worked with Gunter for the next 25 years. I'm still buying probably even greater, faster rate than I have ever done before. But what I do now is I photograph it all, because the currency of books and journalism is no longer the word, it's the image. I was afraid of selling things, of getting rid of stuff, because, you know, I'd actually lose it. But the photograph can reach so many people, so I can concentrate on capturing the essence of that piece. And once I've done so, basically I've got it, which enables me to release it and pass it on and let somebody else own it. You watch that as that turns round, and it's like nothing else on earth. It's absolutely fantastic. Fire, that's the word we're looking for, and it knocks pottery and ceramics into touch, and silver and any other material. This is why it's so great. Oh, I love it. The question always is, what's hot, what's coming? Because everybody wants to be ahead of the market, and from my way of thinking, it's a Swedish glass designer, Erik Högland, who died in 1998. He probably did more than anybody else to take glass from a point of utility, drinking glasses, decanters and the like, to fine art. I think that's fine art, but more beyond decorative art, and that's important. That was new. And another thing that really sets him aside is I think he's funny, and I think that's great. I like funny things. This is the escape route. I'm a real fiddler, you know, because I've got so much energy in me, and the way I kind of dissipate it and touch base a bit is here. This is the place where it happened. Hush now. Breathing it, it's absolutely fab. Is there life beyond glass? Probably, but I haven't reached that point yet, you know. I'm still lost in it, you know, I'm lost in this void, which is the complexity of the subject that compels me.
And Andy tells me that many of his best buys have been made at boot sales, so it's all still out there. But beware, Andy sets off for the bargains at 4 a.m. Earlier in the programme, we cracked some of the hidden codes used in jewellery, but there are still a few more for our experts to decipher.
you see bits of jewellery that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily quite appreciate just how potent they are. A good example of that was a key brooch that I did very recently, where you take the first letter of each gem and it goes on to spell a word, such as regard. Starting off with ruby, R, E, G, A, R, D. You know, a lovely message of love and sentiment,
Yes.
regard. Or it could be dearest.
Yes.
Or it could be your name spelt out in gemstones.
Really?
Which is a lovely idea, this concept of jewellery in the 1820s and 30s. We don't have that nowadays, that kind of soppy romanticism.
I found one 1,000 years ago that spelt my wife's name. It spelt Caroline with the first letter of each stone, and it was the first jewel that I gave her.
Love and loss are inextricably linked in the language of jewellery.
Now, I have to say, this looks like a very simple ring, almost like a wedding ring. Is it a wedding ring from your point of view, or what's the story behind it?
No.
I remember very clearly, a lady brings in a gold ring that she discovered after digging through her potato patch, which is an unusual place to find a gold ring. Gold ring engraved on the outside and inscribed within the hoop with a little motto that dates it to the 18th century. Well, although it does have an appearance of a rather simple gem ring, there's something slightly more interesting about it because it is, in fact, an old mourning ring.
Right.
And, of course, it's very high carat yellow gold.
Oh, it's not.
It is. The top of the ring is set with a blue stone, and it is not contemporary with the ring. These old mourning rings were mounted with little crystals at the tops that often contained a little lock of hair underneath. And that's dropped out, and so a jeweller's put this little blue lapis lazuli stone in. This tradition of people to engrave an inscription in a ring and then to plug in the head of the ring a little block of hair was so universally popular in this country. Today, taboo. No one would dream of doing that.
The highest possible moment ever for mourning jewellery was when Prince Albert died in December 1861, just before Christmas. And it pitched Queen Victoria into a sort of into a passionate grief that lasted 40 years.
I assumed it was a Victorian mourning locket and would have had a portrait or lock of hair of the dead person inside.
She made the wearing of black hugely effective, and the wearing of jet and of strange materials like bog oak and vulcanite made of hardened rubber to simulate jet. And so it was a craze, really. And we can be absolutely sure that it's made for a widow. And that sounds a rather strong thing to say, but in the Victorian language of flowers, ivy, which we see here, is emblematic of marriage.
Know that.
And black ivy, of course, is a signal that the marriage is over.
I'd like to show this because I think that this is just one of those pieces that really does have a symbolism. Now, this is a piece that belongs to my wife. Now, it's pearls in a frame of dark pinky lilac-coloured gems and green gems. Green represents hope, white represents purity, and violet represents loyalty. What's this? It's a piece of jewellery that would have been made for a suffragette. And that, for me, packs in all that history, the drama, and the beauty of a really delicious piece of jewellery.
The story goes that it's green, violet and white to give votes to women, or green, white, violet give women votes. And it's really quite comparatively rare, but it's something that you do see, but people don't very often appreciate the significance of it.
I think jewellery is just a way into the past. You just have to put your imagination on these objects and they'll repay you. And that's true of all the objects we find on the Antiques Roadshow. And perhaps the best thing we can do is to try to paint this room round a piece of jewellery or a piece of ceramic or a piece of glass. And then it really works. And then somehow you've raised a ghost.
The Roadshow experts have great noses, not just for wonderful objects, but also for a good story. One of our favourite categories is called The Great Escape, where objects very nearly didn't survive a traumatic moment in their lives. We've been reliving some of those close encounters.
I think it was about 1941 or 42, a bomb dropped in the house opposite where I lived in Pollard Street, South Shields. And when we fought our way along the corridor in the dust to what was left of the front door, that was the view that we saw. Hitler had removed 6 of the houses.
The man brought in a pair of earthenware figures about this big, and I think it was his mother had rushed through into the drawing room to say,
"Look what Hitler's done to my lady." And I looked up, and a little bit of this strap had dropped off.
This is this lady here?
This lady here. A little bit of this strap had come off, you see, down here. And the little piece of strap lay on the bottom of this figure all my life.
She wasn't too worried about the fact that the view from her back door was a scene of total devastation.
These things were standing right next to where the bomb dropped?
Yeah, on a sideboard, opposite the window, and of course the window was blown in. Everywhere was covered in dust and grit and bits of stuff. And the 2 figures were just standing there on the sideboard. I've still got the sideboard, and still got the figures,
Well, you know why they survived, don't you?
I've got no idea.
It's because they're German.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, it is remarkable that you're so close to a bomb that takes out so many houses.
Yes.
You would expect a ceramic object would just be shattered by the impact.
Yes, yes.
But there they are, surviving.
There's no rhyme or reason to whether or why something survives. I mean, in my line, ceramics clearly are going to get damaged in their lifetime.
Even during peacetime, houses still get the odd knock, endangering your porcelain.
At St George's Hall last year, I think it was, a lady sat down and produced this fabulous porcelain plaque. And straight away, she got a real bubble about her. She was really, you sort of tried to hold people down. She was a giggler.
When I was about 13, which would be about 20 years ago, a lorry hit our house.
Beg your pardon?
A lorry hit our house. We had an accident, yeah, I know. We lived on a corner and a lorry hit and the vibrations shook it off the wall.
But you sit there and think, lorry, impact, fallen off the wall, hit the floor, and here's this piece. And it was and she started laughing, I started laughing, because it should have shattered. It should be in pieces. And there it was, crisp as the day it was made. And it is a sort of late 19th century tradition of painting on panels that became very, very popular. In terms of sort of commercial appeal, for me, it's got everything. I think that if it went up to auction, it would carry a pre-sale auction estimate of £2,000 to £3,000.
Oh, OK.
But I actually think it's the kind of panel that on a good day, I wouldn't be surprised maybe if it started to nudge even up into the 4,000 figure. Divine intervention? There was somebody looking down thinking, it's not quite time for this one to bite the dust.
Not all ceramics lead such a charmed life, but Henry Sandon thinks every pot deserves a second chance.
Lacks a cover. Haven't got the cover? No. It was a wonderful robuster vase painted with swans by Charlie Baldwin. Unfortunately, it's had a bad break. Did you break it?
No. Well, Henry came across the room at Castle Ashby to have a look at it. Oh, yes, lovely, Worcester, because he likes Worcester. And he beamed, bless him.
How did you come by it, then?
We farm, and I took some scrap in the pickup to the scrap man. It was raining, so I had a cup of tea in his little caravan, and I passed comment on the beautiful colour. And he said, well, it was all right until my daughter dropped it. I said, how much do you want for that? He said, no, you can have it, my duck, if you want it.
And there it was. She saved it from just being smashed up. And bless her for doing that. And she'd mended it. Not terribly well mended. She thought it was good mending, but it was quite well done. But you know what this would be worth in perfect state?
I haven't a clue.
Even without a cover, you're looking at several £1,000s.
Really?
Yes. one of the great pieces of ceramics this is. So it's worth having repaired.
Well,
Love
I've done it all right, haven't I?
Oh, you've done a jolly good job.
I didn't want to have it done professionally because it was such a lovely story behind it. And to have had it done professionally whereby there was no mark of the story, I thought would spoil it for the children or grandchildren, whoever might have it later on.
We've seen near misses from the Luftwaffe, lorries and clumsy children. But your biggest enemy could be in your kitchen.
Do you put all of your pottery figures in the dishwasher?
Well, when they need really washing, they come up very nice, actually.
They do.
Dishwashers are one of the most horrible things invented. I mean, if you put something in a dishwasher which is of good quality, porcelain, say, particularly, you can strip off the gold, strip off the colours. What an awful thing to do.
You are teasing me about the dishwasher, aren't you?
No, really.
Right, OK, well... Well, I'm lost for words. I wouldn't put it in the dishwasher anymore. This is a particularly tricky enamel, and it doesn't like going in the dishwasher. You shouldn't put it in the dishwasher.
Do it again.
No, please don't.
I once had the joy of going into the Buckingham Palace china pantry, where the keeper of the pantry, who looks after all the Queen's porcelain, was washing up a service in a big plastic bowl with warm, soapy water, washing it by hand, treating it with loving care. And that will survive, of course, for hundreds of years. But it wouldn't if you had a dishwasher. The Queen has no dishwasher, I understand. God bless her for it.
A lesson for us all to take greater care of our precious objects. And that's just about it for this edition. Next time, we're reunited with some of the most memorable characters in Roadshow history. Former host Hugh Scully reveals his top finds from 19 years with the show.
To find items like that, really, well, it was one of those things that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up.
And David Batty confesses to a secret ceramic passion.
I find objects fascinating. Whatever they are, I'm interested.
Before we go, ever wondered what's been the biggest reaction from an owner on finding out their humble possession is worth a small fortune? Well, to be honest, we're still not sure, but here are a few classics to choose from. Bye-bye.
It's got to be £3,500.
That's a lot of money.
£4,000. Each,
You know you make me
2,200.
wanna shout, look my hands jumping, look my heart pumping, throw my hands
Oh, yes.
Joking.
So it has warmed you up.
My children played with this when they were young.
You're joking.
No.
Never.
Yes.
I think it's about £6,000 would be sensible.
£4,000.
Wow.
£4,000. What it was worth.
Quite useful. Unbelievable.
This year's slogan may well be "Do something funny for money," but Sir Alan's not laughing. Jonathan Ross may well get fired in the conclusion of Comic Relief Does The Apprentice as part of this year's Red Nose Day, kicking off on BBC One now. Next, here on BBC Two, Life with the Chelsea Pensioners.